Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining.
We're s-
Go
you
ahead.
want to take it, Anthony?
No, no, go ahead. Sorry, buddy.
We're we're so happy to have you all joining us for our talk about OER to accelerate access to workforce credentials. My name is Lisa Young. I serve as the faculty administrator for open education and innovation at the Maricopa Community Colleges. So my role is really cool because I get to play in a whole bunch of playgrounds where I look at things that are innovative, disruptive, and or trending, and research them, incubate them, determine if we're going to scale them for our organization, and then work on that implementation. And so in my e-portfolio, I've been working on open educational resources for nearly 20 years. But in addition to that, I get to play with micro-credentials, AI, and digital transformation. And so I'm really happy to be here chatting with Anthony.
Thanks so much. I'm very happy to be here chatting with Lisa and with all of you. I'm Anthony Palmiotto. I'm from OpenStax, and I work on the development of the OpenStax resources. Mostly, folks know us for textbooks. We do more than that, and we're always seeking to do more than that. I work a lot with faculty, people on campuses, and other folks and industry contacts in order to make sure that our resources, not just OpenStax's, but all the resources we produce together, have the best shot at helping students advance in those career pathways. That's a lot of what we're talking about today. And thinking about what's for OpenStax, what's beyond and around the textbook. So we're very interested in talking that with you all, and looking forward to all your comments and questions. So I'll just kind of walk through the objectives of today's session. So we want to develop knowledge related to microcredentials, something we'll do together. Lisa and I will express some things, but of course there's a lot of perspectives on this. Align the 5 Rs and other OER characteristics with microcredentials and workforce needs. What role can OER specifically play? How does it have advantages and overcome challenges? We'll evaluate workforce development opportunities, where there are grants and programs, if OER can be a solution there. Think about opportunities for industry and institutional collaboration. Definitely looking for some feedback on that from everyone. And we'll talk about project structures and approaches to incorporate OER. So, not all of these are underway yet. We've been talking a lot about them, and we've been digging into them, and we have some good information, but always seeking to learn more and work with the community on this.
So the first question that we have is, what kind of institution are you from? And so this is a Mentimeter. We used it in the keynote earlier this morning in the welcome. And so you can either grab your phone and take a picture of that QR code and connect, or you can go to menti.com and you can put in the code 99017867. Hopefully we can put that in the chat. It's 99017867. And so we want to hear what kind of institution you are from. I'm going to do my best to switch tabs here and see what we can do. So we've got one person from K-12, one person from something else, and we have almost equal community college and university partners here with us. And so we're so thrilled that you were able to join us. Thank you so much. We still have people coming in, so we're going to give you a moment because we want to represent you here. All right. That Zoom thing always gets in the way of your tabs. Like, do you all have that happen where you can't get back to your tab? I'm a little challenged here. Oh, no, I don't know how I'm going to get back. My apologies, everyone.
Oh, take your time. It's right there. I think.
It's not going away.
Hmm.
No,
Maybe stop share and reshare.
I can't get to it. Oh, wait, here we go. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing and reshare. Okay. Well, Murphy's Law of Technology.
Right. They said be very patient with us on the technology side. That was the
And this is all me. This is
no,
all
no,
this is all me. So
no.
we have another question for you. What's your knowledge level with open education? It was really so exciting. Anthony and Anna and I were just talking about this, how exciting it was that there are so many first-time attendees at the conference. And so we'd love to know what's your knowledge of open education? And I think I need to move it, advance it here. So are you just getting started? Have you used open education? Have you created open education? What are you doing out there?
That's great. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, we've got some people just getting started, which is so exciting. And we've got a lot of people who have used and leveraged open education and many who have created open education. And I bet we also have some open education supporters out there. What do you think, Anthony?
I bet we do. That's very appreciated.
Absolutely. And do have one more question for you. I'm going to do it in the Mentimeter for you. Am I not sharing? I'm not sharing.
Not quite yet. Right now.
And here we go. Our next question for you is, what is your knowledge of micro-credentials and micro-credential pathways? We have novice, intermediate, and expert for you. All right, so most of you are novices, which is so exciting because I've only been in this work for about 2 years and it's been so exciting. And Anthony, how long have you been like kind of engaged with this micro-credential
I
world
would
here?
say actually less than that. Yeah, we haven't done any at OpenStax. We're really digging into ways we can. Our materials used that way, so that's most of our exposure. So it's really been actually the community and others using it that have kind of led the way for us too. Yeah.
Fantastic. So sharing again, this is going to be a lot of back and forth between the sharing. My apologies for the choppiness, but
Multimodal.
yes.
Yeah.
So we wanted to just kind of chat with you about like just kind of laying that foundation of what micro-credentials are and how they impact workforce development. And so one of the beautiful things about higher education is that we are able to offer a liberal arts education to our students. We are able to provide them with rich opportunities to learn about so many different things as they work towards their goals. But we have, as you all know, we have some students who need to get into the workforce very quickly. They need that to be able to take care of themselves and their families. Or we have people who are in the workforce who need to level up their skills. And so micro-credentials are basically credentials that verify, validate, and attest that specific skills have been achieved or certain competencies. And so they're generally short time frame. They're very narrowly focused to specific skills. They generally have an off ramp to a livable wage and an on ramp to a stackable credential. And so I think that we have someone with a mic on. We might need to turn that off there. But so these micro credentials, they can be as short as 2 weeks, like a 2-week boot camp, or they could be a year-long program. And then a micro credential pathway is a pathway of 2 or more micro credentials that has that. I'm sorry, the micro credential is the skill. The micro credential pathway has that off ramp to a livable wage and an on ramp to stackable credentials. Anthony, do you want to chat a little bit about like how our micro credentials impact workforce development?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's great. Thanks for those definitions. I think it's really important. We're all kind of, even though people might have different terminology, starting from at least some commonality. I think in terms of workforce potential, I mean, we see, just like Lisa was saying, the person who needs to get into the workforce quickly, but also the person who needs to, level up quickly, or perhaps they're an outstanding worker in any sort of industry, but to move to that next level, they want to separate themselves either at their own discretion. Hey, I want to polish burnish my resume, get that extra skill in management or communication or something, time management, financial understanding, or so on. or their employer or the potential job that they're going into might require it. And when we're talking about career, we're talking mostly about workforce, but this actually, of course, also goes into your academic career. Students may, in understanding better ways, we're talking about durable skills here, better informational literacy, better time management, better the abilities along those lines. Well, that also makes you a better student, which in essence also leads you to more workforce potential. But and generally, we're talking a lot about the work directly in the workforce, where people who are in the workforce can quickly attain or more rapidly attain a higher level of understanding, ability, and hopefully economic remuneration.
Yeah, and one of the things that's really interesting about micro-credentials is a lot of times they're represented by a digital open badge. And so students are also able to earn these open digital badges that have not only that visual representation, but all of the verified components that a micro-credential has within that badge, that metadata that has information on what the skill was, what level of proficiency they mastered it, what skills that are in a national database those students have achieved and earned and can demonstrate. And so with that, it's machine readable. And so when employers are looking for people, they can go through and find students or find potential employees with these skills. Also, it's really great for motivation theory. Our students are often motivated by having that incremental earning and getting that achievement of being able to accomplish something. So we've looked at a couple different frameworks for micro credentials and put together this micro credential framework. And micro credentials are successful for a number of different reasons. First of all, they are accessible. They have employer and industry engagement. It's not usually something that someone creates because it needs to be industry backed. It also includes collaboration and coordination. When you're looking at meeting the need of an industry sector, that collaboration and coordination is really important. We've already shared that micro-credentials are skills-based. We want them to be high quality, and the students have to be able to demonstrate high quality. That proficiency level, often with a micro-credential, is a higher proficiency level than passing a class that included that skill set. The relevance to the industry is really important. Again, the assessment for that integrity of the credential, that assessment has to be really strong and really show that mastery, because that's what, when an employer sees a micro-credential, they're expecting and anticipating that that student's going to be able to perform at a certain level. Clarity and transparency is also very important to provide that clear, detailed information that is related to and relevant to the industry. The duration could be, as I mentioned earlier, super short or as long as a year. That stackability to earn additional credentials, and then ideally shareable. Right now, like in terms of micro credentials, they're shareable in that you can earn that open digital badge that is that representation of that micro credential, and you can share it with a number of platforms. And there's trust in regard to that the students should have control over who they share it with. But the idea is that when they've earned that credential, they can share it. Anthony, do you want to add anything about this?
Well, first of all, I think this is a great framework, and thank you so much for putting it together. And I think what it does is it also represents not only what micro credentials, need to be and will make them successful, but as we'll show in a bit, not to preview it too much, but I think so many of the things we're seeing here and that Lisa just described are so in line with the sort of the concerns of the open community. The open community, we talk about open resources and things like that. We don't always talk in our documentation about something like student control or access, but in almost every meeting we have about this sort of stuff, we talk about that: student privacy, student access, their ability to control things. So I think this all weaves together. And I think the other thing thing I just add is that there is a perception or reality, not sure, that industry and higher ed are not linked enough as they need to be. I'll bring myself back to a different conference, the South by Southwest EDU conference, back in March, and every session was industry and higher ed need to work better together. They need to work together, and sometimes it was premised on the that they aren't working together. Oh, they never talk, and in about half of every room or every Zoom, somebody was saying, yeah, we work with industry all the time, right? But I think the reason that perception is there is because it isn't as visible. And having micro credentials, having them not only made but used and used by employers in these ways that Lisa's describing, that's what will show that linkage and also improve the linkage between industry and workforce over time. And that's something we're all aspiring to. We'll start somewhere, but we want to make it better all the time, just like everything else in OER.
Definitely, definitely. And we kind of talked about durable skills, but one of the things that industry is asking for are these durable or 21st century skills. Um, and so like these skills of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, project planning, resilience, mindset are things that employers are really wanting us to be able to help our students understand, recognize, and use in the workplace. Um, Anthony, what are your thoughts in regard to those durable skills?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're so important. They're the things that keep coming up, and it really seems to pervade many industries and also across many schools. As we talk to, Lisa and I talk to, people from all different types of colleges and universities, as well as high school, as well as different populations, in some sort of educational program. These are the ones that keep coming up. They manifest themselves differently in different industries, right? That's why, open is so important here, because we can make examples and exemplars that are, tuned to a certain industry, or a certain type of industry, but we're going to try to make them as general as possible. But that's where OER comes in and allows that change later. But I think that it is something that every single worker in an organization can gain. What do we see on LinkedIn all the time? People that are well established in their career putting up badges of something they attained or something like that, because sometimes maybe it's a little badge overload, but I mean, many of us that are on the call have probably been in 10 different time management workshops, but attending the next one, maybe half of it will be not as helpful, but you learn something. And that's really the goal of these, even for folks that have some experience or already in the workforce. So again, it's creating something that's a little more universal, but also, as Lisa said, specific to the skills, so that the employer knows what the person taking that and representing that micro credential, what they should enter the workplace with.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that we're seeing micro-credentials leveraged for are CEUs. And so that it's another space that has a lot of opportunity. Again, this is somewhat disruptive, still trending. And, we're determining where these micro-credentials are going to land, and how we can support industry with these. And so there's so many different ways in the landscape that we can explore this. So here's the big question why we're all here today. What makes OER an optimum mechanism for micro-credentials? Anthony, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, yes, definitely. So I think even just going, we don't have to go back to it, but even, the definitions we put up of micro-credentials and micro-credential pathways, there are so many different types and audiences and mechanisms for delivery of micro-credentials. And, as Lisa's been expressing, they have a different range of time, right? And any sort of educational resource or educational experience, if it's meant to take 6 hours or it's meant to take 16 weeks, I mean, it's a very, very different resource. So any organization or partner or group of folks or industry or funder can come up with the best pathway they think, whether it's an average, whether it's a soapbox, whatever it is, but it's not going to be universal on its own, right? Not only the content in it, but the entire framing, sizing, scoping, scheduling, pacing of that activity or that series of activities. is going to need to be differentiated for different types of audiences, sometimes different industries, sometimes different levels of preparation, what the students are entering with, and also how it's being distributed and by whom. So we'll take our in these efforts, organizations can take their best shot, right? And I would say one other thing, just in the reality world, typically if a school is making a series of micro credentials, just like if a school is making a series of online courses, even if they want them to be used universally, they want them to be used for their students, right? And that's completely natural. That's not limiting. It's just how things are, right? So, but doing them in an OER way rather than a closed way allows that great effort that was put in to be maximized at that school, but then localized everywhere else.
And Anthony, that's so true. And I think that one of the things that we can really look at as we look at this in terms of open education is, excuse me, I have to cough. Hang on a second. My apologies. Is that we could put together materials that align with the needs of industry, but then with open education, we can really customize them for the different employers and still keep the heart of the mastery of the skills there. Um, we've been exploring a lot of work with durable skills. The state of Arizona provided for years a credential that was really around durable skills. And one of the challenges that we had with that was that it was standalone. And so it had to be done the same way every time in a different system, and we weren't able to pull out pieces and integrate it within other curriculum. And so I think that that's a really big place that we could look at really leveraging open micro credentials to be able to use it in a lot of different ways. One of my dreams, we're not there yet, but one of my dreams would be like being able to have the durable skills micro credentials embedded in our gen ed curriculum. And so the faculty could use the content and of course modify it as needed and customize it, but the assessments would still measure what's needed to be able to earn the credential, and that a student would leave our community college district with all of the durable skills that were embedded in their course. So that's my dream. Maybe someday it'll come true.
It's a great dream.
We do have one question here.
Yes.
Can you talk about collaboration with industry and the tension between open education and industry over protection of IP? And that's from Ellen Phillips.
Thanks, Ellen. That's a great question. Anthony, do you want to take that one or you want me to?
Um, I'd be glad to start out, so I think that it's a great question. And especially if we're talking about micro credentials that would involve, and anything in my head, and I see the other comment there, so I have HVAC in my head. I'm talking, but um, even for durable skills, maybe there's a framework that's authored by, whoever, an industry partner, whether it's Intel or Ford Motor Company or a small business, right? That somebody has a great idea. They might want that to be sort of closed, right? That framework or that approach. I think that we'd have to think about, how that works. And in a way, just to kind of take the theme from the conference, maybe resist a little bit, and say, is there a way that the industry can sponsor or provide or fund in the way that many of the philanthropic and other government funders have done for many different types of OER over the years, but not dictate the actual content, or take it a different way. I think that if we do these as OER, it's also OER for the industry too. So it can involve a version, and at OpenStax we've done this in a couple of times where we've had some sort of sponsorship or some sort of partnership where we wanted to make something that was national, or international, was going to be able to be used by everyone. Our books aren't perfect, but we try to make them as widely applicable as possible. But then we knew, even in the development of it, that there was somebody who had a very specific use case for it, and a specific audience. And even though sometimes those folks were involved in either the creation or the funding of that work. And so we said, okay, we'll do it this way. Let us develop the open version, the generalized national version, And then you'll have the right to use it as well, and you can add in that other layer of industry specific, company specific, or something like that. That's not a perfect answer to the question because it's a very good question that kind of poses a bit of a dilemma. But I think those are some ways that we could sort of do it, and I do think that many of the industry partners. In many of these types of micro credentials, especially in durable skills, might be really okay with that. When we get into very specific things, additive manufacturing or some sort of computing or something, maybe there are proprietary aspects that we need to consider, but we just have to, those you might have to handle on a case by case basis. And at least if you
Absolutely.
have anything better than that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think an example of that also is like the space industry. So the space industry, for years, NASA provided most of the content in regard to materials related to much of the space industry that people had access to. They were government documents, and so of course they were in the public domain. However, there were areas for our national security or for IP that were not shared with everyone. But as we move towards the commercialization of the space industry, one of my concerns, as I think about like micro credentials and I think about just the materials, is that there's such a need for that material to be shared globally as so many more countries are reaching to space, also because of the collaboration that's going to happen over the next many years, the need for translations and all sorts of things that we could potentially lose that. And I think that this idea of leveraging open education for micro credentials, and then of course having areas where IP has to be protected, and but the foundations of that work could still be shared openly.
And we got another question in the chat that I think is kind of similar, and I think maybe asking Rachel was asking sort of everybody, but I think it's sort of along the same lines. And I think that one aspect is that some of these industry partners, like they're hearing this call too, either through the fact that they need workers or some sort of corporate responsibility or even philanthropy on their front, and they don't realize that sometimes in-kind support in the way of HVAC diagrams or policies and procedures or something like that might be something that's beneficial. And also some companies, it depends on the organization, depends on the industry, they might have so much. I mean, just think about like just working, in education as we do and other types of things. There are things, artifacts, documents, procedures that you might have made 2 or 3 years ago that are probably sitting in a folder somewhere or a Google Drive. Well, these companies have the same thing, and they might not give away the schematics for their top of the line new HVAC system, but they might be willing to give the one from 5 years ago that has the same basic structure, or even 10 years ago, that is enough, quote unquote, to teach students what they need. And I don't mean to say enough there that we should be sort of selling these students short or anything like that, but there are some basic principles that could be exemplified by, older documents, older or non-cutting edge materials. Sometimes that's the best place to start that many of these companies might be interested in. And maybe there are sort of workforce partnership, agencies or something like that that might even foster some of that.
Absolutely. To continue on, one of the things that, we all are aware of are the 5 Rs. And so what we looked at doing was looking at a micro-credential OER framework. And so this idea that we could take that micro-credential framework that we shared earlier and look at where they fall within the 5 Rs that David Wiley so beautifully had put together. And so you'll see that, in terms of access, assessment, and duration, we're looking at reuse. In regard to access, we are also looking at not only reuse, but redistribution, being able to redistribute it. I'm trying to use big words there. When we look at the duration, as Anthony so beautifully talked about earlier, like the ability to reuse that content, revise it for the different durations of being able to earn those micro credentials. In terms of revision, the idea of looking at that industry and employer engagement, being able to potentially revise it for the different industries, quality, like being able to revise it for quality in issues, concerns, or different purposes. Being skills-based, is that being able to revise and remix to really make sure that it's a skills-based. And in terms of remixing, we've got that collaboration and coordination, that relevance, that stackability, that ability to be able to remix these materials. And then in terms of being able to retain that content, so that as you move through those stackable credentials, you still have access to those foundational materials that you use to master those skills. And then again, when we look at redistribution, it's that clarity and transparency, it's that shareability and that access. So we wanted to really look at how we could leverage that micro-credential framework with the 5 Rs. We could get much more deeper on this, but we don't have the time, unfortunately, this time, but we will in the future, and you can always reach out to us. Anthony, anything you wanted to add on this framework?
No, I mean, I think it's great, and I so appreciate what you did here, and it's so important to us. And I the only two things I'd ask is, or just mention is, everything, if anything Lisa's ever been involved with developing in terms of OER, I have, and I'm sure many of you have. The minute you put it out, somebody's saying, "Oh, I do it in a different order," right? Just like, and that we're expecting that going in, and then whatever program is available, whatever industry is supporting, whatever state or federal grant or philanthropy is supporting, it's only going to be a finite number. They're only going to be able to say you can do, 15 micro credentials, or we only have this many resources. It's not infinite. We know that. We all know that in this arena. So, the other thing is, the framework and structure itself, the underlying technology, if that's all open as well, then people can, if an initial set are accepted in some way, then that 11th or 16th or 25th, or the next series of micro credentials could be built on the same pathway or structure, even if they're brand new entirely.
And I was at the Convergence conference last week in New Orleans, and someone is creating an open source credentialing platform. So that'll be really interesting too.
Yeah, and
There's
yeah, go on. Yeah.
there's a question in here, and actually one of the participants has also answered it, but do you have any other ideas of where some databases of OER micro credentials are, where they can look for those?
My apologies. I am right behind the elevator at the hotel, and there's this crazy noise back there. So first of all, my apologies for any background noise. I don't know what's happening with the elevator. So
No,
wanted to mention that.
no, sorry.
Because there's crazy sounds coming. Can you all hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, Heather can't hear the noise. Great. So I have not seen any micro-credential OER repositories yet. And so I see that eCampus Ontario is looking at some. There are always over 1 million micro-credentials registered in the Credential Engine registry, but they don't have a field in the database at this time for whether it's open. This is really pretty new. So I'm so excited about learning more about what Mary shared in regard to eCampus Ontario Open Library. I'm really excited to see that.
As you were.
But we're working on it.
Yes.
Whoops, sorry. We have another Mentimeter question for you. So where is your institution at regarding MCs? I'm excited to see that eCampus Ontario is doing some good work on this. Would love to hear what you all are doing. And I just have to change my sharing. My apologies, everyone.
You're doing great.
Something just happened. I hope you're not seeing all my email. It's good. All right. Whew. There we go to the next question. Now I can share my screen. So So are you just exploring and starting? Are you actively developing them? Are you offering them micro-credentials? Are you offering micro-credential pathways? Um, this is really like there's some institutions like Alamo is doing like just incredible work. The Colorado community, the Colorado system is doing some really great work in regard to micro credentials. We've been offering micro credentials in like data analytics. We just created over 35 micro credentials and a micro credential pathway in behavioral health and direct care worker. So there's some work being done, but the idea of just exploring and starting is totally perfect with that. And I'm going to now stop sharing again and share. I'm so sorry for this. And then we want to ask you, are you leveraging open education for your micro-credentials? I know there's only a few who are really doing a lot of work. I know eCampus Ontario is doing that, but wanted to know if any others are. Okay, we're not seeing a lot of that, but I didn't expect it, so that's totally great. Um, and so our next kind of thing we wanted to discuss, and we have about 5 minutes. So, Anthony, do we want to do this? Do we want to move into Q&A? What are your thoughts here?
Um, well, maybe we should see if there are any other questions, and then if I bet questions might even overlap with challenges a little bit.
Yeah,
So, and then if not, then we'll how's that sound?
perfect. I also see in the chat that Ohio State is just getting started with a new professional and continuing ed program. So yeah, Amanda, we'd love to chat with you. For sure. Any questions
If
coming
anybody
in?
has questions, please put them in either the chat or the Q&A. We'll look at both. Make sure.
And we've already like kind of talked about some of the challenges is things like in like IP. That's definitely a challenge in there. And yeah, Ellen just mentioned about badging systems, and we are approaching this in a very like strategic way that we're badging micro credentials, but we are not badging professional development. We are not badging participation. We are badging micro credentials that lead to stackable credentials. And so we're being really very, very strategic and very slow in terms of scaling this so that we can make sure that we don't dilute the value of the micro credentials and the badges in the workforce. We want to make sure at my institution, we're 10 separately accredited colleges, but we want to make sure that we're all doing the same thing so that because our industry partners don't know that like when they pass like into another zip code that's kind of like a feed zip code into someone else in the county. So we want to make sure that we don't duplicate our efforts. And I think that like the other thing is like maintaining the reputation with that proficiency level. And so the assessment piece is really important. And so the assessment piece can't necessarily, it can be used, but it can't necessarily be open in terms of revisions and such, because if you like, let's say we have a nationwide um industry partner that's going to be using this, and if all of us on this call are using the micro credential and each of us changes the assessment, then it doesn't necessarily have value for the industry partner anymore. And so those are some pieces that we really, as a community, all of us, the open education community, if we want to move forward with this work in micro credentials, we really have to work together on.
I completely agree. I think one of the challenges that comes up is, just to point you're making is industry acceptance, and that it's basically sort of a catch-all for a lot of the things that you brought up and so on. And part of it, but it also wraps into the other sort of complication is that, part of the thing that might lead to industry acceptance is industry buy-in. And, attributing we're an OER, we want to attribute those who need to be attributed, and the industries themselves might be the ones to attribute there, in that case, to show that linkage, or something else, show that buy-in. Hey, we hired X many people that went through this micro-credential. I mean, maybe that's a new tag or a new sort of rating that could be in micro-credential repositories that really would not be in a, you wouldn't see on that in a textbook, or anything like that, but maybe micro-credentials you could. But would they be open to doing that? Were there proprietary aspects, and would it handle localization? Maybe an employer in Arizona is different from, what an employer in North Carolina that might have different things they're looking for, or things they want to express or compete with.
Right, for sure. And I also see a question, do we foresee a global formal recognition process for a fully OER micro-credential? At this point, I know that Europe is doing some really great things with micro-credentials and blockchain technology. But speaking from my experiences in the US, like we're not seeing a lot of movement towards those open micro-credentials yet. And so this is kind of us being like, this is our dream. We'd love to see open micro-credentials. Let's get the community together and see, here's like a potential framework we can start with and grow as we go, and see how we can, make change and move to this.
Absolutely.
And we are out of time. I'm going to
So
stop.
I'm going to stop the recording now.
Thank you all so much for coming. It's so good to see so many